Wake up.
Wow.
Slappy,
Time-
slappy.
Wake up. It's time for podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Adcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your Heavens Design Team board member and resident snake appreciator, Soup.
And I'm your illegal underground skateboard death racer, Renu.
This week, AT stands for Absolute Territory because we'll be talking about the winter 2021 season. But before we get into that, what have we been up to? What have you been up to?
I don't think too much has happened since the last time you and I spoke. I'm like on the very end stages of my big work thing, my big work project animation thing. But it's gotten like a lot of praise so far in preliminary reviews, so I'm really happy about that. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the especially around these seasonal episodes, the window between when we record these is much smaller than it normally is. So there's bound to be a little bit of, I mean, that and the fact that, you know, not as much like really happens anymore, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean
well,
yeah.
Yes and no. Like there's
yes
stuff that
and no.
happens
Yeah.
outside of our own purview that
Yes.
We have absolutely no control over. But we as people don't really do as much that is differentiated from the day-to-day. It's part of why we've lost all concept of time. Anyway, yeah, glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's going well. Hopefully I'll be able to wrap it up tomorrow. But yeah, they were like, I think this is the best thing you've made at this company, and I was like, cool.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. What have you been up to, if anything?
Well, today we celebrated my mother's birthday, so
Ooh,
I made
that's nice.
a lovely little dinner.
Aww.
I made an entire loaf of bread. It
Ooh.
was it was roasted garlic and rosemary bread. Probably, I think, probably one of the best loaves of bread I've ever made. I think.
Ooh,
I think I did a great job.
I want to try.
Yeah. Maybe one day when we're allowed to go outside again.
Yeah, you make me bread.
Sure. So I made a loaf of bread. I made some pasta with pesto, and everybody knows pesto is the best though.
It is the pesto. You're right.
Yeah. And I made some steaks. I used Serious Eats reverse sear method because I bought a thermometer recently, like a food thermometer, and
nice.
Turned out really, really great. The only thing is I would have liked to get more of a like sear/crust, but I was afraid of overcooking. I think because my pan just didn't get hot enough before I slapped those suckers in there. But it was still really good overall. And definitely some of the better steak I've ever made. So very happy. That recipe or that method is courtesy of J. Kenji Lopez Alt, who is all kinds of wonderful. It's actually really funny. He is so he was a contributor for Serious Eats for a long time, and nowadays he just kind of does his own stuff. He has a book called The Food Lab, which is pretty much the basis for most modern cooking, at least in a home setting. It goes into lots of like, you know, science and food stuff, like debunking myths about like, you know, searing stuff to lock in the juices, that kind of stuff. It's very cool. I really want to pick up a copy someday, but for now I'll just kind of get it drip fed to me through all of the like YouTube videos that like, you know, crib off of the recipes contain and methods contained within. But yeah, I'll link that method. Kenji is really cool because he's actually local to he's not local, so he's from the East Coast, but he currently lives in the Bay Area. He runs a restaurant in I think shoot, where was it? It's I don't think is it Daly City? Somewhere somewhere south of San Francisco, like southern San Francisco. And it's very good. It's very good. They have an excellent cheeseburger. Probably one of the best cheeseburgers I've ever had.
Oh.
So yeah,
Nice.
he has a YouTube channel which I will link. Very very cool and very lovely. He has like such powerful kind of internet's dad energy, and I kind of love it.
I like that.
yeah. Very very down to earth, cool guy.
Nice.
And yeah, that's kind of the most exciting thing I've been up to, right? Like,
that's cool.
You know, to be honest, like the sort of turnaround has been like what we recorded the last episode like not even a week ago, so
yeah, like, basically less than a week.
it was like 5 days ago.
Yes.
And then we also hung out yesterday to watch anime, so like not a lot has happened obviously in that span of time.
Yeah, I mean that's okay though, because like we have a bajillion things to go over this episode.
Yeah. that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, we are jam-packed today, so...
We are jam-packed today. We did a lot of research into a lot of anime. And actually, you know what? This season looks pretty good. Shockingly good.
I would say so.
I thought it would mostly be, like, sequels and stuff, but for the most part, I've actually been really impressed with a lot of the non-sequel stuff that we've been getting. Which isn't to say that the sequels are bad, because they're really good, actually.
Yes. But there's like a nice variety this season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It feels like a very like good season overall.
Yeah.
But let's get into it. Let's talk about the second season of The Promised Neverland.
The biggest hype.
Ooh, boy. What to say really? Like I always find it a little bit difficult to talk about sequels, especially when we're a couple episodes in. So we kind of normally just gloss over them. It's like, well, I mean, it's season 2 of the thing that you probably have already watched or are interested in watching. So you will know based on whether or not you watched the first season. I would 100% absolutely highly recommend you watch the first season and the second season. We have currently watched 4, I think, episodes of the second season of The Promised Neverland, and oh my god. It has not failed to impress. I'll say that for sure.
Yes, 100% that you leave off on the first season wondering where the story will go because the world is opening up significantly and you have zero clue what's going to be waiting for the characters. And the way that it has slowly opened up has been so fascinating. I'm really compelled. I have no idea what's happening next.
Yeah. The story is like a very good mix of like kind of time spent in like what you would consider like downtime, like there's because while you always feel tense that something's gonna happen, there are plenty of moments where it varies things because it's like, oh, well, like here's a little respite. You can like take a breath here. You know, we're gonna have a little like a fun sequence where the kids are getting like settled and they get to like have a little bit of relaxation, right? So that then makes every disruption of that like all the more tense. And it's like really like I felt this in the first season, but the second season is like really showing that both the story and the writing are like really solid, but also the direction is really good.
Yes.
And it is an absolute masterclass in how to write a tense story.
Yes. 100%.
Like, because it would be so easy for this story to have like absolutely zero stakes whatsoever and just kind of feel like flimsy and there's nothing to it. But like the way that it makes you like actually hold your breath when very stressful things are happening is very impressive. Especially because it's like a group of children and like it's very difficult to make children compelling characters.
Right.
Especially the more realistic you make children, the like more difficult it is for people to like I find the more difficult it is for people to like depending I think it's a spectrum, mind you, but like sometimes when your kids are too realistically children, it can be very difficult to get invested because you're like, oh god, stop whining, please.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if your kids are like too unrealistic, where it's like, you've activated my trap card. I planted these landmines here 40 years ago, right? You'd be like, this doesn't make any sense. Children are not like this. So it's very important that you strike a balance between.
There is a balance, yes.
the fact that in this show, like the kids are shown to be very smart and intelligent and capable to begin with because that makes them tastier, right? There is a story conceit for why they are so smart. And at the same time, there are a lot of moments where they also have like weakness because they're acting like children, which I think is really great.
Yeah.
And especially for the older kids, like Emma and Ray, you can tell that because they're forced to take on this like parent like role for the other kids, they're growing up really fast.
Yes.
And like it's very obvious and you can see it happening, which I think is really great. Like I think it's so subtle and nuanced about the way that it builds its characters, even though they're all children. The like respect that it gives to children while also not forgetting that, they're like 6 years old, right? It all comes together to like actually make you like root for these children. You're like, yeah, kids, beat them, beat those oppressive structures, beat those demons that want to eat your brains.
Yeah, they have the children move the story along, but also they're thinking for themselves and thinking of ways to act, but also try and do it in a way that won't necessarily endanger, their family, their children. And I think that's that's relatable on a scale of like, if you as an adult were in that situation, you would probably be thinking along the same lines. And so you just kind of very easily immerse yourself in their struggle.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see where I will be feeling at the end of this season about the Promised Neverland, but I am having a lot of thoughts, and I know I definitely talked about the Promised Neverland first season, but I don't remember anything that I said about it, and I would just like to say that this show is about raising children, human beings, to be smart, but not too smart. To be complacent and innocent and naive, and to be used for the purposes of people who want to eat them. Hey, doesn't that sound familiar? That's society, baby. Yes. Anyway, to be fair, there's I feel like this is something that's like pretty easy to like look at anytime you have any media about like creatures that eat people, is that oftentimes they're very easily read as a metaphor for larger power structures that like will exploit people for their own gains, regardless of the harm that they cause. Like, like the idea of vampires as like fancy schmancy like decrepit billionaires that live in giant castles and feast upon the working class, right? Like that's not a very hard metaphor to make. It's not a very hard line to draw. But
they're pretty, I would say in the second season even more so, explicit about the fact that they pretty outrightly state that as they're explaining the history of the world and how it got to be this way, that these children were misled in what they believed the state of the world to be in, but also that they're paying the consequences for deals and agreements made like hundreds and thousands of years before their time, that they would not possibly be able to have any part of, and yet they're taking up the mantle and having to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. So
I also really like the the other characters that we get to see, the demon characters.
Oh yeah.
Sonju and Mujika, I think they're really cool and interesting because they tell us a lot about demons as a society, which I think is really cool. And the fact that they don't eat humans for religious reasons, Mujika kind of not wanting to at all, and Sonju being more like, well, you see, domesticated humans I cannot eat, but a wild human, I mean, yes, I could hunt one of those down. Tasty. But I do think it's really cool because, like, I think a lot of times we tend to make a fantasy like race, and then we kind of ascribe to them either this idea of it's a monolith, or it's like it's a monolith and there happens to be like one or two good ones. I like that there's a very nuanced, like, well, these two characters are helpful and they aid the main characters, and they have their own motivations, and they don't even agree with each other, but they're also outcasts from the whole of demon society because they don't necessarily fit in. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, me too. And that the fact that they kind of open the season with that, like the very first characters they meet outside of the farm is them.
I also like that they don't agree necessarily about the interpretation of their own religious doctrine. Like the fact that Sonju's like, well, I mean, I can hunt wild humans, and Mujika's like, humans, friends, not food.
Yeah.
Right? I love when we have very nuanced characterization of the ways people interpret and express culture, and I like when it's not just so monolithic that it's like, well, everybody is the same except for, like, you know, Dristo Dwerdin, hero of the drought or whatever the fuck, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not necessarily that the demons are evil inherently. It's that the structures that they've, like, you know, built have very lasting consequences upon people who ostensibly should, you know, as sentient creatures should have their own rights. It kind of, you know, there's kind of a, like, there's almost a very, like, a vegan sort of bend to it where it's just like, you know, isn't it kind of fucked up that we do this, right? And it's like, you know what, yeah, you're kind of right. Yeah. So I'm very interested to see where that is going. I have super enjoyed every episode. Is just a joy to watch, and I cannot wait for the next one. Everyone leaves off, and you're like, oh. Yeah. I might want to go read the manga, just to, like, know what happens, because I'm, like, dying to know what happens. But at the same time, like, the way that the anime is produced is so good that I kind of almost want to just experience it through the anime first.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Is as tempting as it would be to go read the manga, especially because the art is amazing in the manga as well. The pacing in the anime, and I imagine it maintains this in the manga too, is so good that I don't mind just waiting weekly for the new episodes. Even though, like, it keeps me in tension, I'm dying to know, but it's like a good kind of, like, I'm really excited for the next episode.
I think you're right. Because it feels like sometimes a show is predicated on cliffhangers to the point where a cliffhanger will happen and you're like, oh, I have to see the next episode. But this, I think, like, The Promised Neverland, I think, is quite remarkable in that what it does is, instead of leaving you with a cliffhanger where you're like, I'm literally going to die if I do not consume the next episode now, it's a really great, like, even if there is a cliffhanger and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen next? It's so good in that it leaves off at a point where you are waiting in suspense for what happens, but at the same time, there's a lot of time to think about the episode that you just watched. From week to week, and I think that's the kind of thing that would be lost if you watched it all in one go. And I think that's kind of like, there's something remarkable about that as a feature of a weekly show, a show that is released weekly, where if you can make your show in such a way that people are interested in thinking about your show after it has finished airing, week to week. But like in the time between the episodes launch, I think that's a very remarkable thing without being like, oh, what's gonna happen next, but like hard theory crafting, right? Because there is a difference between like discussions of like, oh, like what's gonna happen next? It could probably go this way, probably does this, like these are probably the twists. And between that and thinking about the episode that you just watched and like having time to digest it, right? I think that's very important. I think The Promised Neverland strikes a very good balance in how much it like caters to those kind of impulses. So overall I'm
doing.
super impressed.
Yeah.
Very, very good show so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Dr. Stone Wars, the second season of Dr. Stone. I have caught up to the manga of Dr. Stone, and this arc is pretty cool, I will say.
Nice.
It's naturally it's an extension of the first arc. Nothing in it is remarkably revolutionary. I think the more interesting stuff actually happens after this arc, but yeah, I'm excited because Dr. Stone is like just a fun kind of like pulpy show to watch. It's very like it's very earnest and fun and even though there are stakes and things are, ostensibly quite dangerous at many times, it's like it's just kind of a fun adventure ride, right? It's like you can just kind of like watch it and get your brain filled with some science and you're like, cool.
This is pretty neat. Yeah, I would tend to agree. Neat. It's fun to watch and then you learn a little bit of that science goodness and they're gradually but surely building up to a big conflict. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. I agree. I will say, things get so wild in the Dr. Stone's like story. They get really wild, and I cannot wait for those parts again. I wonder how far this season will go because there's certainly enough content for like probably like at least 2 more seasons. So.
Right.
Looking forward to it.
I'm down. Yeah.
The anime looks pretty good, generally speaking. No complaints.
Didn't we say that maybe or maybe not the women look a little bit better this season?
I think yeah. I was thinking about this, and I think that they might have come into their own with the anime style a little bit more, and so the female characters tend to look a little bit like more normal. Because like definitely the original art style of the manga, the female characters have a very like kind of bimbo-y look to them. but like not just that though. It's like the fact that their eyes are huge and like way like the distance between them is like unsettling.
Yeah. Their mouths and noses are weeny. Yeah.
Like little buttons.
Whereas, like, the male characters, at least in the anime, seem to emulate the original style really well.
Yeah. It's very funny because the difference between them is just, like, so stark. You're like, oh, the guys look, like, interesting. It's a very interesting art style. And then you see the women, you're like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah, what happened here?
It's like if you, like, if you had to put, like, points into your manga drawing skills as like an RPG, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna put like 80 points in drawing male characters, and I'll put like 5 in female characters.
And the rest goes into like background set pieces.
Right, exactly. But yeah, overall, it looks good. The women tend to look a little bit more normal in this season, I think.
They look more generic anime style versus very unique.
Very, very like I like Dr. Stone. I like learning about science.
It's fun.
It's very fun. You're like, oh, what will he do next?
Yeah.
Oh, he made rubber. Cool.
Ooh.
Yeah. I really like this stuff, right? Because it reminds me a lot of in a funny way, it kind of reminds me of like people who play video games but make like really silly builds. So like they definitely play the game in a way that was not intended but is possible, right? They're like, well, you see, you can get this upgraded material here if you just skip this part by like going this way. And then, like, you can come back and just roll the first boss with your, like, plus 10 weapon. And you're like, cool.
Ooh.
Right? It's very fun. Because it's, like, definitely... It feels like you're playing with the world in a way where it's not necessarily intended, but it is allowed. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like watching a speed run. You're like, oh, Civilization speed run. Cool. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Horimiya, which I have been waiting for to get a proper anime for years now. I love Horimiya, and I do think that it this isn't a problem with the anime, but I think that the manga kind of runs into a well now what problem a little bit later down the line, just because it has been going for so long. But like although it's based off of like a web comic, I think. Which is interesting. But yeah, it kind of feels like maybe the source material like at a certain point was just like, well, now what? But I really like Horimiya because I think it's one of the really great kind of like romance stories in like kind of the manga sort of anime space. Because it's very like in a sense it's very realistic, I think. The way that it kind of gradually builds its characters' relationships, and the way that it kind of depicts this very like domestic relationship, right? Because oftentimes when you have a this is something that I noticed, and this is something that I was thinking about when I linked a video recently about Tonikawa in the podcast Discord. And
it was a good video. I liked it.
Yeah. The editing on the Pause and Select videos is always like very, very impressive. But the idea of Junai as like a genre of like pure love, and the idea that it is the process, that it is about the process of getting into a relationship but nothing afterwards, and the idea of like love being built in domestic spaces as the relationship being where love is built is very interesting, and I think very indicative of the way that, you know, Horimiya kind of operates. Which is really great, because I really like that kind of stuff. And it has, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it has always irked me a little bit that like a lot of romance anime seem to end when the characters get into a relationship. You're like, well,
too.
Well, like, where's the rest of it?
Right. It's like that's
right?
the end goal. That's it. The end. Bye.
It's like, yeah, it's like, what happens afterwards? And,
right, because I think a lot of authors think that the stuff that comes after is boring, right? Because it's domesticity, or you know what will happen afterwards. And it's like, but there's interesting stuff there too.
Like, that's where all the cute stuff happens. I want the fluffy stuff.
I want that fluff.
Yeah. But I also completely understand, right? The sort of drive to get into a relationship is a very powerful motivator of character drama, right?
Sure.
The sort of mismatched intentions of like, you know, like, oh, will he, won't he? Like, I love this person, but do they love me back? You know,
right.
That kind of stuff obviously is very popular for a reason. It's in a sense kind of like thrilling, but it's funny because Horimiya completely skips over 90% of that, because it just deals with that in the first episode. Which isn't to say that it does that in the manga. The manga actually spends a great deal of chapters surrounding it, but the vast majority of it takes place after they get into a relationship. And the thing is, so Horimiya actually had an OVA that came out a while ago, and I guess for that reason they kind of like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhooded the first episode, where they were like, oh, well, I mean, you've probably already experienced all of this stuff, so we're just gonna gloss over it, really.
Wait, really? That's why the first episode is like at a breakneck pace.
I don't know if that's exactly why, because I don't remember if the OVA takes place before or after they're in a relationship. But
yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting choice because there is a lot of like kind of tension and drama that happens in the lead up to them getting in a relationship. But the anime is just like it just handles that in the first episode. Like it skips like months, which I think is hilarious.
I was rather shocked because, you know, as someone who has read manga of this nature before, you expect a certain type of pacing, right? And so I was really shocked at how quickly things were moving along. I was like, "Oh, they're already. Oh, okay. They acknowledge feeling. Okay, so now they've set up this kind of all right." And it was rather overwhelming, and I wasn't sure if I liked it or not.
Yeah.
And I don't, at least it doesn't seem like the rest of the show will go at that quickly of a pace. I don't know. If it does, then there's a very clear intent there, in which case I could be down for it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
because there's a part of me that really likes a deliberate pace as well, you know, where it's like you just kind of build up to it and then it happens and then you explore the rest of it afterward. You know.
I definitely agree. Although I do think that the I think a large part of it seems to be just because so much of Horimiya happens after they get into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just kind of decided they would just sort of gloss over it. I will say though, the way that they progress the first episode is, if nothing else, it's very like good, I think. I'm trying to think of a better way to put this, but it kind of goes really quickly, but I think it has just the right amount of stuff for how fast it was going. Like they have just the right amount of scenes that happen between the two characters. And I think a large part of that is because of the very subtle way that they build the visual metaphors that happen. I think one of the most striking things was how they depicted like the kind of like heart pinging, like the dokis, where the world kind of goes like white, and then there's like a little blob of color that goes ping. I think that visual metaphor is really great. And they, I don't know, something about it is like it really resonates with the general sense that I get feelings wise. Like it's kind of like a synesthesia kind of thing where it like is very satisfying to me, where I'm just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. Yeah. It's like your emotions are kind of like moving outside of yourself, and your like heart is moving a little bit outside of yourself. It's like you feel a little bit offset from it. Like they have this like kind of visual scene where the characters like silhouettes are colored in their colors, and they're like moving slightly off of like offset of the characters. And it's a very cool way of building like a sort of visual shorthand for an emotional space, which I think is really cool.
You know what, I would agree, and I would say that I wish that I had seen more of this kind of stuff in that ping pong anime that was that was all tell and no show.
Oh my god, yes.
Not the ping pong anime, but the one with the two girls, obviously.
I know exactly
last
what you
year.
mean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree that they build up to the emotional moments really well, even though it did feel like they were skipping over a lot of things. I ended up enjoying the episode and the story they were building a lot.
And I would suspect that the episodes are paced a little bit more normally afterwards.
That's what I feel like will end up happening, or at least I hope, so that I can just absorb the moments better.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it I guess the conceit of the story starting with the relationship coming together and then exploring the rest of it afterward is one of the reasons why I like Orimonogatari so much. Where they establish their relationship really early on in the season, and then the rest of it is just them being cute together, and I love that. I live for that.
Okay, I was slightly mistaken. It looks like the confession in the manga actually happens around chapter 4 to 5.
Oh.
So it is actually pretty quick in the manga too. But the fact that they crammed 5 chapters into one episode is a little funny.
That is still impressive.
It's still a lot to cover.
It is still a lot.
There's a lot that I want to talk about with Horimiya that I won't touch on yet because obviously the anime hasn't, finished airing. We haven't watched more than one episode of the anime. And it's mostly just kind of like my thoughts on the way that the story itself progresses, but
yeah, I'm really interested to see the rest.
I think this is like a good place to leave it for now. Horimiya is a really great it's a really great romance like manga / anime, but it's also one that feels very different than a lot of romance series. It has a very like refreshing quality to it, I think.
Yes.
Largely because the characters are so likable and because they're so well developed.
Yeah, definitely.
And I will say that there is kind of a this is funny. I think that there's kind of a shift in the first couple of chapters where the manga like pivots to what it actually wants, what actually it has decided to be, because the first couple of chapters to me are very like, they read as very like Switch Girl, if you've ever read that, where it's like the main characters are very concerned about their sort of non-school identities getting leaked to the school, and that's a source of tension. Whereas in Horimiya, it starts that way, but like goes in a very different direction and kind of decides it doesn't really want to be about that, at least not primarily, which I think is interesting. I will say Horimiya is by far like one of the most refreshing love stories that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't love reading a whole lot of reading or watching a whole lot of the romance genre, I do have like a couple of ones that I like Orimonogatari. This one does feel different, and it feels different enough in a good way that I am very fascinated to watch more.
Let's talk about Hataraku Saibou, second season. Speaking of sequels, very cute still. Hataraku Saibou, or Cells at Work, is both a fun monster of the week show, while also being educational about your body, and it's also got a great translation, I've noticed. There is a very specific thing that they do, which is the characters will sometimes in the subtitles say, "What the cell is that?" Which I think is so cute. I think that's so fucking funny. Like whoever decided to translate that deserves a promotion.
They do every now and then just drop a pun, and it's like, oh, I like that though. Like,
yeah, it works very well in the tone of the show. And I think it's really great. I mean, the show itself has some puns for sure, like the so the purines, which are responsible. So the purines, which are in your body, responsible for thing like a purine buildup can lead to stuff like gout and like kidney stones. But in Japanese, because it sounds close to pudding, which is the Japanese word for pudding, they depict them as little puddings, which I think is hilarious. I think that's so cute.
It was so cute.
And it's I mean it is definitely more of the same, for sure, with more wacky stuff happening every week, a little bit more knowledge coming every week, But it is very funny because this is airing in the same exact season as Hataraku Saibou Black, which is Hataraku Saibou on hard mode. and it's funny because the episodes I think have begun to mirror each other in a very cute way.
Yes.
Like they're talking about like purines and how like good bacteria can help clear those for you, and then in the like terrible shitty body that like hasn't been taken care of in like 40 years, it's like, oh oops, here's the kidney stones.
Yeah, or the hair cells.
Or the hair cells, yeah.
They both had hair cell episodes, and one goes well, and the other one not so well.
Yeah. Well, one is about acting, the other's about hair loss. So
yeah,
that's how it goes. Okay, so I made this comment while we were watching both of these, where despite the fact that one of these is a healthy body and the other is a very unhealthy body, both of them go through so much shit.
Yeah.
Like one of them is like the Hataraku Saibou Black body is like, oh yeah, it's smoking, drinking, and now erectile dysfunction. It's okay, we fix it with Viagra. Oh, JK, gonorrhea.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this poor dude.
Yeah, I would say I buy into the cells at work conceit a bit more, because even though we're super curious about what's happening to this body, we don't know what they're doing to gain these conditions, right? And that's fine, because everything is in the point of view of the cells. Versus something like Osmosis Jones, you do get to see the kid's kind of daily life and what happens in order for him to get these conditions. But by like seasons later, it feels like he's gotten into everything, and
right.
It feels ridiculous. And so I like that they kind of don't show that, because every day your body is actually fighting off all sorts of things that you never even experience symptoms for, because your immune system is so effective most of the time. So it feels appropriate. But yeah, it's still like the fact that it's every episode is a new thing is pretty wild.
In a certain way, the Hataraku Saibou Black body almost makes more sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all of the stuff that body is going through is like more or less like you can kind of tell what's happening out there.
Yes,
you're like,
yes.
Oh, that dude is smoking now. Oh, he's drinking now.
Yeah.
Oh, he's boning. He's doing the sex. He's doing the he's stressed from work. He's going bald. Oh no, he's got gonorrhea. It's Hataraku Saibou Black is it's a very fun counterpart to the regular series, because it's less like monster of the week and more like survival horror apocalypse. It's like the poor cells in his body are like, what is even the point of us being alive? Like, what future is there for us?
I would say, like, at first, the general feeling that you get is like, why are they airing these like basically back to back within the same season? But then as things progress, you kind of understand why, and it in a way it makes the spin-off kind of more along the lines of like dark humor versus just being dark.
Yeah,
I feel like it would be if you were to watch it in isolation, right?
No, I definitely agree. There's something like very like darkly funny about the fact that like this body just cannot handle this.
Like you see the good body just having a swell time. All the cells are competent at their work and they're doing their best and everything's working out great because the body's taking care of itself. And then these guys.
There's definitely an aspect of it where it's like this is like almost certainly a public health like move to like make people take care of their bodies.
You know, it definitely feels like there's a huge public health agenda behind this.
Don't smoke,
anime.
don't drink.
Yeah.
Wrap it before you tap it.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know how they're gonna solve that overwork problem. Just don't get overworked forehead.
Yeah, I know. The fact that they kind of have a small commentary on, I guess, Japanese Japanese
work
workforce.
culture. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I legitimately think it's very funny that the sort of overarching theme of Hataraku Saibou Black is literally just, well, this entire body is like a society, and it's overworking the shit out of everybody involved, and the ostensibly the forces that may control them are just making the worst decisions at every possible turn, making everyone's job way harder all the time. Like the idea of it being a black company, as a term that generally refers to a company that like has like dubious work practices, is I think very apt, and also very bitingly funny, because it's like, well, everybody in the body is getting overworked because the guy is part of a society where his body is getting overworked.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there's definitely an amount of humor in there. I like that they have gone for a slightly more mature art style. Like all of the body, like all of the cells look a little bit different, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
Than the healthy body counterparts. Like the kids are just like gruff and like mean. The macrophages seem like a little bit more old fashioned, and they're all tired all the time. The killer T cells are like mega killer T cells. They're like
mega bros.
Super buff Bara bros. I think that's so funny. They have shifted the genders of the cells. The blood cells are all men working at this company, and the white blood cells are all women. Whereas as opposed to the healthy body, where all the blood cells are all the white blood cells are men, and all of the red blood cells are they're actually mixed. Actually, now that I think about it, but like, that kind of stuff I think is it's enough differentiated where you're like, oh, this is like an alternate universe where like things could be much worse.
Yeah.
Right. And I like it because a lot of the times it's very like Hataraku Saibou is like very cute about like, oh, it's the end of the world, and the monks are coming. Oh, it's okay, I got this. And then Hataraku Saibou Black is like, we are literally going to die to gonorrhea. This is the end, everybody. And then the fucking orbital laser comes down that is penicillin, and it's like, oh, thank God.
We survive another day.
We survive another day. At what cost?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
what awaits us tomorrow?
if you are going to watch Hataraku Saibou Black, I highly recommend interspersing it with the second season of Hataraku Saibou. I think you should watch one episode at a time of each, because it really it really enhances the experience.
It sure does.
But yeah, they're both pretty good. They're
They're both great. I love them.
Yeah, I like it because we also get to see a different side of the working conditions of the cells, right? Because like obviously a healthy body is able to fight off all these things, but we get to see what kind of trouble you can run into with an unhealthy body, right?
Yes.
Like we get to see, what happens when your own body tries to destroy itself because it's just so overworked and stressed, right? It's like, these hair cells, they must be cancer cells. Yeah, definitely recommend both of those. They're very cute shows, especially if you know anything about. Like, part of the enjoyment of watching these shows for me is just hearing Renu go.
My delighted gasp at how they're illustrating
the delighted
concepts.
Science gasps. It's one of my favorite parts.
Every time they introduce a new cell, I'm so excited.
It's that cell, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means.
And then they explain it to you, and then you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Wonder Egg Priority. My God, what to say about Wonder Egg Priority? Holy.
Yeah.
If you are going to watch any singular show this season and you wanted to know what the standout show was, it is Wonder Egg Priority 100%. Like, obviously, The Promised Neverland Season 2 is very good, but I mean, you have to watch the first season to really appreciate or experience the second whatsoever.
Right.
One Direct Priority, obviously, being its kind of own show, is very... Man, I don't really even know what to say about it.
I'll say okay. We can start with the animation, right? The animation is quite good, in my opinion. It's a pretty show. The style is cute. In terms of like the plot is the reason I laugh when we bring this up is because it is it is very confusing, but
right, yeah,
in the way that because you don't really know what to expect will happen next. A lot of things feel like they come out of left field because a lot of stuff happens that is very abstract and fantastical.
Yeah. Well, so there is a here's the thing, right? Is that a lot of anime, because it's so fantastical, can oftentimes kind of play into a fictional space where it's expected those things are happening. Where, for instance, like if you were watching a high school anime and a bear showed up for some reason and decided, I'm a student now, you'd be like, yeah, okay, right? But the thing about One Direct Priority is because it is using that aspect very intentionally, it kind of makes it foreign again in a way that really kind of plays with your perception of the show. It's a term that is kind of like sometimes somewhat erroneously called magical realism, where things are happening. They're like fantastical things that are happening because they have some point to make about reality itself. It feels a lot like I don't know if you've ever read a Haruki Murakami novel, but a lot of Haruki Murakami novels play in this like very magical realism space where like the setting is ostensibly real life, but there is a much that is fantastical that is happening, right? Like talking cats and, you know, UFOs that make people lose their memories, that kind of stuff. One Direct Priority really plays very hard into like a very explicit sense of magical realism as like a greater than reality kind of story and setting. And I think what's important is that the way that you do that is first you have to ground your show or your piece of media in realism for magical realism to have any real meaning. And I think One Direct Priority does that really well. Everything about the show, from the direction and animation to the sound design, makes it feel very grounded and real right up until the point that weird stuff starts happening, and it makes you question what is real, which is very important. It's a hallmark of the genre.
Yeah, I would 100% agree that when the weird stuff starts happening, it really threw me through a loop because I was like, what is this egg?
Yeah, why is there an egg? Why is she in the bathroom? Did a person just come out of that egg?
Yeah. And then after that, when the fantastical stuff, like more of it, starts happening, because you already have the setup of what kind of life she's living, and they kind of start building on that more and more and tying it in with the fantastical elements, you understand where the elements are coming from. It's like, oh, okay, it's inspired by this part of her life, and that's why it's manifesting in this way. And so I don't know where it's gonna go, because obviously there's a lot of stuff happening and we don't know anything about this fantastical world that she's in, aside from the fact that she is apparently immune to being hunted down within it. But yeah, like that aside, there's also a lot of tension in this anime.
Yes, okay. So this show is to put it's very okay. Yeah. If nothing else, you could cut the homosexual tension in the show with a knife. It's so thick. Like, because here's the thing, right? Is that there's a scene where two female characters are lying on a bed and like one just reaches over and like touches the other person's foot, and it's like this is like a level of like intimacy and I don't know, just like tension that like there's no straight explanation for it.
Like when we were watching it, Soupy was like, "Bro, this is like Kaoru and Shinji that moment." In
it really is.
The bath.
It's such a like Kaoru Shinji like touch hands moment. Like okay, so you know the tension of the like scene where they're playing the piano together. It's that level of like really, really thick, visceral tension. Because like, okay, here's the thing. There's something just about the fact that like that you just like grab someone's foot that's like very, very different than like, you know, even grabbing someone's hand, right? Because you're like, okay, in the first place, who would ever think to animate this? It's like, all right, so for this scene, we need her to grab the foot. Grab the foot. I need you to animate her grabbing the foot. Like, okay. But I mean, there is a kind of historical sort of context to be drawn here, because traditionally in many cultures, like feet are seen as like dirty because they're the things that touch the ground. You're not supposed to point at things with your feet. Very specifically in the Bible, there is there are many passages about like, you know, Jesus washing the feet of beggars and the like. Obviously, there are some questions about the translation and interpretation of those texts, because people might have thought that, you know, feet were a euphemism for your bits. Which you know is, but I mean that is also important to consider, the fact that the idea that that feet are like a thing that touch the ground, and they're kind of like these dirty objects, and you know, normally people, I guess, like just wear shoes, so like there's something very viscerally tense about just like touching somebody's foot.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
and the fact that they're like, well, yes, this is how our definitely heterosexual kids are gonna interact. You're like, I see what you're doing. But no, yeah, for sure. I do think that a large part of it is on purpose, because the general sort of aesthetic of the and thematics of the show seem to be about people being bullied, right? To the point where the people who need to be saved are people who have been bullied and have committed suicide. And obviously, there's a big kind of content warning here. In the first episode, a person definitely jumps off of a building, but like, you know, the idea that like it is the One Direct Party is one of the shows in recent years that has had the kind of strongest tour de force first episode I've seen in a really long time. And it's because it immediately establishes its core themes and core emotional core, like right off the bat, where it's like, okay, you're supposed to care about this because this girl was bullied and basically watched by and like didn't help somebody who was also being bullied, and they committed suicide, right? And there is an amount of like survivor's guilt and trauma kind of associated with that. But there's also the idea that being a bystander when you have the ability to help somebody is maybe a kind of it's a kind of evil, right? Where it is something you are complicit in if you are you know, helping or ignoring like evil that is happening in the world, to the point where it's so explicit about this that the kind of enemy force in this show is like in the first episode at least, like the manifestation of evil is the see no evil. They're literally like they're the see no evils, right? So the idea that being complacent and
allowing evil to happen around you is being complicit in that evil, as I think a very interesting thing, because it's also very like sympathetic to the main character, obviously, about the fact that she was also bullied and she also had that kind of trauma associated, and she just wanted to be left alone, right? And ultimately, the evil here is society, right? It's the people who are doing the bullying. But there is an amount of complicity that you have to accept for not doing something when you can do something. And One Direct Priority is like, from the outset, it seems to be this kind of fantastical journey through reconciling that and through wanting to become able to help people anyway, right? The end goal is obviously for her friend to come back to life, and the question of whether or not that's even possible is moot. It doesn't matter, right? The end goal is the person who is at the beginning of this story will not be the same person who is at the end of this story. And you can definitely tell that is the case from like right off the bat. And I think like it's very difficult to write a story that immediately grabs you so hard and so violently and thrusts you into this a space. And I like the fact that it plays into the idea of a magical realist space, because I think not enough anime do that, because it's taken for granted because it's anime, right? With things like God, what am I thinking of? With things like like Yuri Kuma Arashi or stuff like that. The metaphor is obviously there, but the idea does not have to do with the warping of reality in ways that become foreign. It's just these are accepted parts of the world. There's a little bit of this feeling, I think, in Sarazanmai, but because it's so literal and so clear where the transition is, it doesn't kind of hold the same feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I would say maybe like Satoshi Kon's stuff.
Oh,
for
sure.
Yeah,
100%.
There's a huge sense of it.
100%. If I had to name one director who plays with space and time and creates that sense of reality itself kind of becoming inconsistent, it's Satoshi Kon. 100%. Satoshi Kon is like obviously one of the most remarkable directors ever in anime, right? But part of the reason is because you can tell that his film style is meant to do something in anime that is not possible in film, while at the same time kind of taking cues from cinema, from film. And One Direct Priority feels a lot like that, where it's taking these like very clear aesthetic cues from like television and cinema, but at the same time it is also doing it in a way where the anime is kind of first and foremost where the story is happening, right? It doesn't feel like the story is happening in a novel that just happens to be in an anime,
right?
So yeah, it's very like visually, we talked about the animation, but it's very visually appealing, and it feels the animation itself looks so good. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was like the way they like rendered it or something, but like it feels like a movie. It feels like movie quality animation. Like it feels like I'm watching a KyoAni animation.
Yeah, it's a very clean style, but also very visually interesting.
Yeah, it's very clean, but also very like detailed. I think KyoAni is definitely the closest analog I would think of. Where it feels like there is a lot of detail, but not in a way where it's like kind of overwhelming to look at.
Right.
It's just like if you snapped a still shot of any like part of the episode, it would look gorgeous. And the progression of it is very very interesting, right? Like you have a point where the kind of like animation style changes because you get the the manifestation of evil, the see no evils, and they're rendered in like 3D, like CG, to purposely look very unsettling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have this very like Madoka-esque mixing of styles that like really kind of lends it an otherworldly feel in a way that is definitely on purpose and not just, well, we ran out of budget and production time, it's time to just put the CG in there. And my God, we will talk about that.
We'll talk
later,
about that.
Like,
there are quite a few shows that
there are quite a few shows. I mentioned this, I think, in the last week's episode, but it feels like Madoka in ways that matter, while at the same time feeling like it has an identity outside of it to the point where it might surpass it. I think that, again, right, like Madoka Magica is one of the best like written stories in an animated kind of like, you know, form, but at the same time it feels like it is completely devoid of any particular stance on anything. Whereas One Direct Priority feels like it has put a step forward, like it's put its foot forward and like boldly declared what it is about, which I think is really cool, right? I don't think that media necessarily has to say something, but the fact that it is willing to say something, and it seems to be willing to say something very important, I think is very cool. And I highly recommend that people watch One Direct Priority. That it is the show that I have my eye on probably the most this season. I really want to know how it turns out. All right. Okay, let's talk about Kumo desu ga nanika. So, okay. They have reduced the snoutage.
Okay,
like
so
this,
so background.
somewhat.
Soupy has read the manga, loves the manga. I have not read the manga. My only exposure is to the anime and also Soupy's complaints about how the anime has portrayed certain character designs.
So the main character is a spider, and the and okay, I did discover today that this was actually a problem with the light novel. The light novel has a very snout-like design. It is very clear that whoever designed this main character has no idea what a spider looks like, and has no idea how to abstract the idea of a spider into something that is fitting of an anime manga kind of visual drawn space. Because I don't understand why, but they gave, like, imagine an orb, right? The orb is your head. That seems like a spider. A spider has an orb-ish head. But then you add an Undertale Toriel-esque snout to it. and suddenly you are not just a head, you are a bean. Like, okay. I hate this design with a burning passion because I cannot look at it without thinking about Undertale, like fucking Toriel Undertale, right?
What I don't like about it in comparison to what I've seen of the manga is it's the eyes. The style of the eyes. They went with like your very typical anime kind of annoying-ish anime eyes, right? They're pink, they've got eyelashes and everything. And in the manga, they're just very simplified circles with a little bit of eyelash on them. And it's very cute because it goes with the rest of the way that the manga details the form of the spider, which is also simplistic and round. Like, it just it feels cohesive.
I 100% agree. Like just two simple objects and some legs feels a lot more like a spider to me than putting the snout on. The snout instantly makes it look like not a spider. And like, I also think that like, I do agree about the eyes. I would have preferred just the blank circle eyes, because like that also looks more like a spider, right? The thing about the manga design that's like really good is that it evokes the idea of a spider in a way that is cute and also doesn't look enough like a spider that it might like be upsetting to look at. And like the light novel and anime go in a different direction to achieve a probably similar goal, but they do not succeed because it looks very different than I would say a spider should look.
It's just kind of unsettling, but I mean, obviously it's okay. So the show is a spider isekai where
yes, it's a spider isekai
where a schoolgirl and her schoolmates get reincarnated into this fantasy world. They all get reincarnated into different beings. So some of them are human, some of them have swapped genders, some of them are creatures. And so the main character is a spider. And the spider is in 3D.
Okay, all right. So, yes. Okay, I have to make a complaint about this, right? Because apparently, I've only ever read the manga. I've never read the light novel. And apparently, in the light novel, there's a lot of content that actually gets cut out of the manga because the manga is primarily about Kumoko, the main character, who is the spider, and about her kind of journey, but the light novel and the anime actually mention the other classmates and where they end up. And so here's the very jarring thing, which is that we have known that this anime was going to come out for a little while, right? And we've seen the trailers for it. I've definitely ranted about the spider's design, and and we went into the first episode and we're like, all right, that's a CG spider, all right. And we're like, they reduced the snout somewhat, but I really wish they had just reduced it to 0. Just slide that snout scaler all the way down to 0, please. But here's the really upsetting thing, which is that when we swap perspectives to the stuff that I had no idea about, by the way, because I had only read the manga, and the manga cuts all of this out. The portion about all the other students is completely in 2D. It's 2D animated, and the shift was so jarring because everything before then was like all in 3D, right? Like 3D like landscapes, 3D environments, 3D character models, like 3D battle action sequence where she's fighting a frog and running away from her cannibal mom, but like. Then we move over to 2D, and the 2D animation looks actually pretty good, like pretty alright. Like, yeah. And we're like, what? No way. And they spend, I shit you not, 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Not in Spiderland, talking about like all of the isekai stuff that happened. And then we get the ending. The ending credits roll. We had 5 minutes of the main character before the ending credits rolled. And then the ending credits roll, and it's in 2D. It's the spider, but in 2D.
It's in 2D. Like the whole time I was like, okay, so why is the spider in 3D? Is it because they didn't want to draw a spider a bajillion times? Even though it's a rather, simple design, it is kind of geometric, so they have to show the spider in all sorts of different angles, doing all sorts of different things. Maybe that's why they went for CG. But then, in the credits, they show the spider rendered in 2D.
And it looks so much better. It looks so much better.
Even given the current art style, it looks so much better. But then there was a very brief shot in the credits where they show the spider in the manga style, like with the blank eyes and the cutesy little mouth and everything. And I was like, Mother of God!
Yeah. What happened was we basically got like a quarter of an anime and then a promise of what the anime could have been in the ending credits. I'm so unreasonably upset about what they decided to do with them. Like, do they understand that you're not supposed to make your main character rendered in 3D and then everyone else rendered in 2D unless you're trying to make some kind of weird like point about the medium? Like, the main, you're supposed to the 2D resources for the main
right. The only thing I could think of, right, is that they're trying to do the whole like spiders are like unsettling and everything that the spider is dealing with is unsettling, right? It's supposed to be like the removal of the main character and her situation versus like the nice situation that her classmates are in.
See, okay.
But it's like as a result, you make your audience stare at the less appealing part of the animation for most of the episode, right? It would be like if in Promised Neverland, where they render all the monsters and and everything, the giant monsters in 3D. That's what you stared at the whole time instead of the cute 2D children.
Yeah. So like in the Promised Neverland, there are these like huge monster. There's like this huge monster that roams around the forest, and it's like rendered in 3D because it looks super like huge and unsettling, and it works really well. But imagine if it was like the other way around, where like all of the kids were rendered in 3D for no reason, and then this monster was rendered in 2D. You'd be like, what the actual ding dong fuck is happening here?
Yeah, but in this case, the spider protagonist, I guess, is the monster, and then the cute children are like classmates.
Like, listen, the problem is that it 100% does not feel like an intentional choice. That was made creatively, right? It feels like a production choice, and that's the by far the worst kind of the worst kind of problem to have, where you're like, this feels like it was done to save money and time.
Yeah, because like they rendered the spider in the credits in 2D, and so it feels like that's what they had originally wanted. And the frog that she battles with is so ugly. Like in terms of like being a 3D model, it does not look good.
If they had animated the entire anime in 2D, I think we would be singing the praises of this anime for being so fun. But like because it's rendered in 3D, everything about it is just a little bit off. And then like when you see her have to eat the like bodies in 3D, you're like, well, this doesn't check at all. And then when you see the 2D like other classmates, you're like, oh no. Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
I would just read the manga, honestly, or the light novel, and just hope you don't have to look at the spider too much. I cannot in good faith recommend this anime unless like by some miracle it like fixes all of these problems. Like,
yeah, we might be a little too hard. I mean, honestly, you might be able to just watch it and be able to accept it as like a 3D 2D hybrid anime. But
if your eyes do not get offended by watching this anime, I recommend it because the story itself is pretty fun. As far as isekais go, I think it's one of the better ones. And it has a unique, interesting premise to it. I like that she doesn't start out super overpowered, but does kind of like grow into her own power and has to use her wits and abilities to their kind of most creative uses. All that stuff I really like about the show and the series, but I also don't know anything about the like human characters in this show. So I can't make a recommendation that way. It was a little bit weird that we got way more of that than the spider in the first episode. I would say that feels like kind of a miss. I probably would have directed that differently, but like other than that, like if you can get past the art style, I do recommend it. I think the story is really good.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun. Anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Next meme.
So next we have Kemono Jihen, which is also just like another confusing show for me.
It's
like how would you describe so the first episode is all set up for what I presume is going to be like a monster of the week situation for the rest of the anime.
Right.
Where this guy gets hired to come out to the countryside and do some investigating because some livestock are dying, and they're I don't know how to describe it without just skipping to the end of the episode.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So basically, the first episode is just a setup episode, right?
Yes.
Like the kid and the guy meet, and then he takes care of business. He reveals that he was hired to kill the kid. He fucking shoots the kid in the head, and is like, "Well, I'll be taking this then." Turns out he's not dead because he's like, a half demon. And then I guess that's it. He gets to the office, and he's just like, "Well, I guess you live here now." And then he sees the other two children that apparently live there now. And
and the guy has a tail. The man that shot the kid
guy
has
has a tail. So they're all like half demons or whatever.
Yeah.
But this show is interesting in that it feels like a shonen anime.
But with horror elements.
But with more horror elements, with a darker tone.
Yeah.
But also like, I don't know. You're right. It does feel like a Monster of the Week thing. It feels like Mob Psycho's grungy feral cousin. Like, like if you kind of boiled it down, the setup would be very similar to like Mob Psycho, where like shady man adopts local misunderstood child, right? But everything about it is like it's just like much more feral. I don't really know. It feels like the first episode doesn't give you a very good idea of what the actual show is going to be like, because it spends so much time setting up the plot.
Yeah, it's like the prologue.
Yeah, but it actually looks pretty good, and it's directed pretty well. I'm just not that interested in the premise of it to begin with. The idea of like supernatural the idea of supernatural detective agency feels very old hat at this point, unless you're doing something more interesting with that premise than just playing it straight. And I don't know, it just feels like 3 children with superpowers get into some hijinks, and you're like, well, what's the point?
Yeah, I kind of wish. Well, I don't even know, because I don't know where the direction of the show is going and how pivotal it is that we know the child's backstory. But it would have maybe been nice for us to have gotten some of that in the first episode. Like, I get why, because the first episode, pacing wise, in order to explain the kid's entire backstory and meeting this guy, like it takes the whole episode. But now that we know that it's actually about bringing this child to a detective agency and I guess keeping him there with these other kids and hiring them, I don't know where it's gonna go, and I'm not sure I'm interested enough to find out. Yeah, and the art style is kind of, I guess, character design wise, it's a bit everywhere. And...
Oh, that was the other thing about this show. You're right. Yeah, every character looks like they come out of a different anime. Like the main boy looks like he comes out of like Hanako-kun kind of.
Yeah.
There's one boy that looks like he just looks like Bakugo.
Yeah.
From Hiroaka. The detective guy looks like God, what is it? He kind of looks like a 7 Deadly Sins character.
Yeah,
and then the girl looks like she came out of just a different series entirely, and I wouldn't be able to place it without looking at her again. But like, yeah, you're. I completely forgot about this.
So if a supernatural detective agency with children that's run by a dude,
if that premise sounds interesting to you, I would recommend giving it a shot, because it is a pretty well produced anime.
Yes.
The direction choices, I think, were very interesting. Like, their shots were a lot more interesting than I thought the plot itself was.
Yeah, maybe it's like one of those like 3 episode
it might
watches.
Be. Yeah,
but yeah, I guess for us, we kind of bounced off of the first episode because we were
like,
I
I didn't feel much.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been possible. Yeah, I mean, like this is like the difference, right, between a show that is pretty okay and a show like The Promised Neverland that kind of immediately grabs you, where like the first episode of Kemono Jihen, the main boya is basically, he's an orphan. He's basically like a Cinderella kind of figure where like everyone hates him and they're all afraid of him and they want him to die, so they just make him do manual labor all the time. And the kind of detective coming to town is like, oh, your parents are probably still alive. Do you want to see your parents? And that's a potentially like compelling kind of arc and motivation. But I think whatever it is, the way that the writing is, because like I think the directing is good in this show. The pacing was pretty good. It never felt like it lagged anywhere. But the writing itself feels a little bit shoddier. Because I didn't really feel any attachment to any of these characters.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because it just kind of felt like they didn't give you a lot. It felt like it wasn't really the point, even though you want to get invested in your main characters. Whereas with something like The Promised Neverland, you were immediately invested in the survival of these children.
Mm-hmm.
And with Wonder Egg Priority, you were immediately invested in the ability for this young girl to be able to overcome her trauma and become a better person, I guess. That's not quite the way to put it, but like, you need to have investment in your characters for that arc to be satisfying or to pay off. And if you don't build it in the first episode, it can be a little bit like it might not be necessarily a sign of things to come. That's not to say it's impossible, but like you can kind of tell usually when you're going to get attached to a character or not.
Yeah, like I guess just story writing wise, I was more compelled and more attached to Spider Girl than the characters in this show, and it's kind of unfortunate because this show, it looks, I would say, better than the Spider anime.
Oh, it does, for sure.
Yeah, I guess writing wise, it's just not as compelling in the first episode.
It feels, and I think this is the thing, right? It feels a lot more generic than the Spider anime does. The Spider anime is it's kind of core writing is very good because it develops the main character in a way that is immediately kind of, you're rooting for her. And she's an interesting character because she kind of has knowledge of isekais and is trying to figure out how stuff works. She obviously has like motivations and likes and dislikes. And with a character that's basically just a blank slate, like the main character of Kemono Jihen, you just don't really get anything from it.
Yeah, like when he's the blank slate, you would then expect that the detective would be the, I guess, more compelling / entertaining one to watch. But he's also really kind of low key and laid back, because he's trying to, I guess, not give away his intentions as to why he's at the village. But still, like, just even personality wise, and
yeah.
And so with both very low key characters, what's to do?
Like, I would say definitely that there is obviously something to be said about the idea that not every story has to be a hero's journey,
right?
But at the same time, if it's not, I feel like one of the most important things is to write compelling characters. And there are ways to write this character specifically that have worked in the past, right? Characters that have like lots of trauma and are emotionless, and have to have happiness essentially thrust upon them before they kind of realize that they were in pain all along, right? There are a lot of characters that have gone through that arc and for whom that arc has been very compelling. Like, I think Angel Beats is a really good example of this, but like, this just doesn't do it for me, really.
Yeah, I would say, even though he was such a douchey character, the main character's cousin felt more compelling to watch because he clearly had motivations, right? He wanted to go to the big city no matter what. He's willing to kiss up to other people in order to, kind of curry favor and get to the city. We had a very interesting revelation where we found out he actually killed the main character.
Yeah,
on accident.
right.
And you're like, what this is messed up.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck?
And then we just leave it at that because we're still following the main character. And it's like, well, all right. Not that I wanted to be invested in like such a douchey, little kid that literally killed his cousin, but considering no one else in the story, or at least in the first episode, is very
no one else
interesting.
really wants anything.
Yeah. I mean, the kid's mother wants the main character to be dead. That's about it. And I don't know, man. Yeah, it was just kind of a miss, I guess, from the establishing.
That's how it felt to me, at any rate. Anyway, let's talk about Sk8 the Infinity.
Sk8 the Infinity.
Oh man, what a show! What a show!
Very different from Kemono Jihen in every way, I'd say.
So sometimes you watch an anime that's just so off the walls bonkers that you cannot help but want to watch more of it. And that's what this felt like to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because like the setup of this show is well, you see, there is an underground illegal skate tournament that happens in an abandoned mine shaft.
Yes.
Where people dress up in cosplay and skateboard to the death, more or less. Nobody actually dies, probably. We've yet to see someone die. But it's very dangerous and super illegal. And for some reason, half the town is into it. And
it's the kind of setup you would expect out of like illegal street racing, but it's applied to skateboarding.
Yeah. It's extremely like illegal street racing, but for you know what it's like? It's it's Initial D, but for skateboards. It feels extremely Initial D, but for skateboards. And you get man, what a way to establish your sort of fictional space than to start by having a skateboard 1v1 with a guy dressed like a Kiss band member who in the middle of this skateboard race, to gain an advantage, will throw firecrackers at you. And like basically you like wipe and bust up your arm because of it. Like what? How do I even handle the sheer amount of information that has flooded my brain in the first 5 minutes of this anime?
And yet the first 5 minutes are like the most well animated 5 minutes of the whole
they're
episode.
So good.
Not that even the rest of the episode is well animated, but the first 5 minutes is like, what?
The skateboarding animation in this anime is so good.
It's really, really well done.
Like this is what sports anime is. Let me tell you.
It's super dynamic and super colorful.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that everything is super colorful. There's like so much color just everywhere. And the motion is like really great. The camera movements are super dynamic.
Yes.
There's a lot of animation. Like there's the sheer amount of animation there is in the first 5 minutes is like astounding.
Yeah.
Like I think everybody should just watch the first episode just to see that first sequence play out.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good.
But yeah, Sk8 the Infinity. So besides being an absolutely bonkers premise, it's pretty good, actually.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the non-skateboarding sections are a little slow, but because of just how bonkers the skate sections are. But like it overall as a whole, it kind of works. I like that we have a character who has like very applicable skills to skateboarding, but has never properly skateboarded before. Like, just like, I'm a super good snowboarder because I'm from Canada, eh?
Canada.
But he's just like, I've never ridden a skateboard before though. And he just is like, I'll do it. I'll skate in your place.
And then he tapes his feet to the board.
Which is super dangerous. Do not do this.
Yeah, don't do that.
There is no snow cushioning your skateboarding. But yeah, I am very, 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 very excited to watch more of this because it's such a like. Okay, here's the thing about this show, right? Is that there's definitely some like kind of, I feel like it is kind of a sports anime at its core in that it has a very like free element to it where it's just like, you know, it's this guy who's kind of disillusioned with his sport even though he's very good at it, and another person who's very enthusiastic about it despite being less than good, but he has his own kind of very unique motivations and desires. Like he wants to make his own skateboard, he wants to win a race on his own skateboard, he wants to prove he's the best skateboarder by making the best skateboard to skate with. And I like their dynamic together because you have one person who's very kind of like low-key passionate but very cool on the outside, and then one person who's very boisterous and loud about it. So they have common ground, but they have different temperaments, which I think is really great. That's the exact dynamic you want in a sort of dynamic sports duo. That's why Kageyama and Hinata work so well together as a dynamic. Because you have one person who's very good at something, but is it's very hard for him to like speak earnestly about his feelings. And then you have one person who does nothing but speak very earnestly about his feelings. And it's a good dynamic. And if you're gonna build a sports anime, it's a great one to build your core around. So obviously you have all that, but at the end of the day, the most remarkable thing about this anime is just how much fun it is. Right?
Yeah.
Like everybody involved in this anime is having such a fucking blast animating this like and making this weird skateboard anime. It's like it's so weird, right?
It's so weird. Like the character designs are off the wall.
The character designs are so good because there's so much. Like obviously you have the guy who's dressed like he's a Kiss band member, and then you have this guy who shows up and he's dressed in like a full like kimono, and he's like got his hair up and he's got like fingerless gloves, and he's just like, hello. He looks like a fucking Vocaloid cosplayer, and he's just like, hello, they call me Cherry.
Wait, don't forget Dio.
Oh yeah. Of course, Dio. Can't have an anime without Takahito Koyasu, of course. This show is just it's off the wall. There's no describing just how weird and wacky and wild it is, and it's so worth watching because of those things.
It still manages to be compelling. It's not like, it doesn't, at least yet, feel like weird to be, weird for weirdness' sake. Like, hey, look, we're quirky or whatever. It's like weird because it's fun.
It's fun weird, for sure.
So, yeah.
highly recommend Sk8 the Infinity. What a show. Oh, and it better be gay. Like, come on. Two boys better be kissing in this.
Listen, we got like 3 anime this season, maybe more, of ladies clearly having feelings for each other. Come on.
give us the boyas. Give us the boyas. All right. Papa, next meme. Let's talk about suppose a kid from the last dungeon Boonies moved to a starter town, which is about what if a kid from the last boss Boonies moved to the starter town of an RPG. That, I mean, you know what? The title, the long title, but it sure gets the gist of it, huh?
Right. I guess if you're having trouble understanding what that means, it's if you imagine, you're playing an RPG game, and at the end, right, is the hardest area, right, where it's all the hard monsters are living, and you have like one last town before you face off with the final boss, and that's where you get all your supplies and stuff and gear up. What if the a child that lived in that town, constantly surrounded by these really difficult monsters, comes to a rather ordinary location that doesn't have nearly as hard monsters to deal with. And so the conceit of it all is that this kid is extremely overpowered and like blows everyone away with how strong and like in terms of physical strength and I guess magical strength as well. But he considers himself like one of the weakest people in his village. So he has like a really humble attitude about him. And yeah, I mean that's I guess the whole gag of the show.
Yep. It's a very cute show about like playing with a very common RPG premise in a way that's unexpected, which is very funny. It's a very like cute, lighthearted show, and you could also just read the manga, I would say. Like I think the anime itself is nothing special. If you're interested in the concept, obviously, I would recommend checking it out. The animation isn't bad per se. It's nothing special, and it, yeah. I've read a decent amount of the manga for this, and I would say that it's pretty good. But also, like, you could also just read the manga. I mean, it's funny because a lot of stuff gets made into anime primarily to just move manga copies, and this feels like it's kind of just one of those.
Yeah, I mean the art style in the manga is also
it's pretty
nice.
Cute. You get to see a character that looks a little bit like Link just kind of roll around and
he does look like Link.
Yeah, he does look like Link. And then he just goes around and he does his stuff. Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a very like fun, lighthearted show. Like, there's not a lot to say about it, really. Would recommend if that's if that kind of setting is what you're into. You could also just read the manga. All right, let's talk about Yuru Camp Season 2.
Woo!
Yay!
I've been so excited for this.
Is so cute.
Yes.
I missed this.
Yes,
oh my
me
God.
too.
Yuru Camp is so good because it's like watching. It's like watching it gives you the same feeling as playing Animal Crossing.
Yeah. It's like you just calm down and you just watch them go about their lives and you learn a little bit about camping and it's just so relaxing and it continues to be so good.
Like there is as far as like de-escalation shows go where like you're like, oh cool, okay, I just watched something really intense. 100% Yuru Camp is the best one to just like watch and you're like,
yeah, you feel
so
cozy
nice.
When you watch this show.
It's such a cozy show. And it's very nice because obviously it is a it has been a hard year being stuck inside, and sometimes you just want to watch cute anime girls go outside and camp. And Godspeed. There's not a lot to say about Yuru Camp that we haven't kind of covered in season 1. Like it's still just as good. The characters are charming. The animation is adorable. It's very cute. The gags are very funny. The comedic timing is really good. That reminds me, and like complete aside, but like I forgot to mention this when we were talking about Land of the Lustrous, but Land of the Lustrous actually has really good comedic timing.
It does, yeah.
The gags in that show I found remarkably funny.
Yeah, like, no, I was laughing. I was like, oh.
Like when Faust loses both their arms and then does that like point, they're like, huh.
Yeah.
It's very cute, very funny. And the like little dogs that go bounce.
Oh my God, when Bort was like trying to like swing their sword at the dog and at the little fluffy puppy thing.
Right. Anyway, so yes, Yuru Camp. It's still Yuru Camp. I highly recommend it. If you have never watched Yuru Camp or Laid Back Camp, before, I would highly recommend picking up the first season now, because it's super fulfilling to watch the like platonic ideal of camping happen when you can't go outside. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I watch it, I'm like, man, I probably wouldn't actually enjoy camping that much, but I'm enjoying watching these like anime girls enjoy it.
Yeah. Like, you don't necessarily have to enjoy the act of camping to enjoy this anime.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's lovely.
Let's see. Let's talk about Urasekai Picnic.
Urasekai.
This show is really weird.
Yeah, so we we have another show, just kind of like Wonder Egg Priority, where it is about otherworldly experiences, but based in I guess like kind of like a realistic world, and the two main girls are definitely in love. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what you want from me, anime season.
Right, yeah. Interestingly, the anime I would say is like, it's like okay.
Yeah.
By far the most interesting part about it is that it appears to be based off of the 1972 Russian science fiction novel Roadside Picnic, which
What?
I mentioned this when we first watched it, but Roadside Picnic is it's a Soviet Russian like sci-fi novel about like another world where or like it was like a forbidden zone with like alien artifacts and stuff in it, I think. And the thing is, the thing that's actually very interesting about this is that the term stalker became a part of the Russian language due to the 1979 film Stalker, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, which is loosely based on the novel. And that term means someone who breaks prohibition enters the zone, which is like, the supernatural zone, and takes artifacts from it, which they then sell. And that lineage is actually what inspired the Stalker video games, which have a very kind of specific flavor to them. Other Side Picnic is very similar in the premise of it, but it's also very different. It feels like a very Japanese take on it, which I mean obviously makes sense. It is a Yuri genred piece of fiction, so they are definitely gay for each other. That's definitely a part of it. And they I don't know, they just keep going into this other world and doing stuff. The setup is very interesting to me, but at the very least, the anime itself, while interesting, did not necessarily capture my attention as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, it didn't really capture me either, and I'm not sure. It's not like the characters are particularly dislikable, but I guess it just didn't really grab me.
Yeah, this feels like one of those things where I would rather just like read a bunch of the manga.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, there's something about the way that it's like, I think like put together or directed or something, where it's like not super engaging to watch, even though the stuff that's happening is fairly interesting, I think. It's conceptually interesting, but practically not very.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway, speaking of conceptually interesting but practically not very, let's talk about X-Arm. So I'm not gonna lie, we 100% watched X-Arm ironically as more of a joke than anything, and it was so much worse than we thought it would be.
It was a punishment.
It was
Soupy punished all of us.
And okay, so Do you know how earlier we mentioned that there was a shocking amount of 2D animation in what we thought would be a 3D anime? There is a shocking amount of 2D animation in what we thought would be a 3D animation.
We legitimately thought that it was going to be a purely 3D anime, just because the entire intro is filled with 3D rotations of 3D anime characters. And so then the anime starts, and our main protagonist in his 3D self is going about his life. He's introducing like some kind of world-ending conflict that involved him, but then it flits back to the past. He's living in his nice little home, and then his brother comes in, and he's 2D.
His
and
brother
also,
is in 2D.
The main character is making fried rice that is also 2D, and
but he's flipping it in his 3D walk.
In his 3D walk, yes. And yeah, the 3D little brother and the 2D big brother have a talk. And 2D big brother is like, bro, you just gotta put your best foot forward. And that is the advice that this little brother takes with him for the rest of the episode, because it comes up again several times. And as he goes to the convenience store, he sees a girl being harassed, and the girl is in 2D, and her harassers are also in 2D. And then he gets hit by an isekai truck, and then we go to the future, where everything's 3D.
Yeah.
I say everything. Actually, though, one or two characters still in 2D.
Okay.
So
yeah.
it's not like a delineation of, oh, the people in the future are 3D and the people in the past are 2D. No, it's not.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Where it was so jarring when we saw the brother in 2D, because
yes.
everything had indicated to us that this was an entirely 3D CG anime.
Yes.
And then the brother walks in, and he's 2D, and he doesn't it. God, and the 2D animation is very limited animation too. It feels like very limited animation where they barely move, they move their mouths slightly. I'm not gonna lie, it looks like the 2D animation is worse than some abridged series I've seen. I think like a Team 4-star abridged series looks better than this. In terms of how they animated the 2D characters.
The lips, and mouth movements and everything.
That would be one thing, right? But the fact that it's 3D and then suddenly there's a 2D character for seemingly no reason, we're like, what the fuck? Why is he in 2D? Right? And then we're like, okay, maybe because the brother mentions I make androids. So we're like, oh, maybe the main character is an android. Maybe it's a very kind of interesting way of depicting who is an android.
Yeah.
And no, that is not what it is at all.
That's not it.
Oh no, that is not what it is at all. I cannot for the life of me come up with any explanation whatsoever. Any explanation whatsoever for why the anime looks like this, aside from the fact that they had one person. The only explanation I can come up with is that the studio is one person. I have no confirmation that is the truth, but that is what I'm going to believe. I'm going to believe.
I could believe that. Yeah.
I'm gonna believe that the studio that made this anime is one person and his little brother. Right? And it's the terrible thing about this is that we move into the 3D space and everybody's or into the future and everybody's in CG now. Yeah. And we're like, okay, cool. This is what the rest of the anime is supposed to look like, I suppose. And then for whatever reason, one of the characters shows up and he's a 2D guy, and you're like, he's next to 3D guys, and nothing about this makes any sense. And for some reason, the villain of the episode is voiced by Kiryu's voice actor, and I just don't get it.
the voice acting like feels like the best, the highest quality thing in this show is that they actually got voice actors rather than like some Joe Schmo off the street.
I don't understand.
Yeah. And that we like it feels like because we did do some research into like who actually is the staff behind this thing. Like you can tell that there's people who know about action set pieces and know like, okay, well, these kinds of moments need to happen, but it's so awkwardly cut and edited together.
Yeah.
That the pacing feels off. And then in addition to that, there are quite a few fight scenes. And it's rather apparent that the person or people editing these fight scenes did not have enough time and or resources to edit them appropriately.
So
because
this is what I would say is that the choreography is not bad conceptually, but it's executed with zero sense of rhythm or impact. Actually, nothing in the show feels like it has impact whatsoever. It feels like everything slides around kind of
yes,
motion,
everything slides around like
effortlessly.
it's keyframed from one from one end to another without any actual like easing in or easing out for impact.
It legitimately feels like a student animation.
Yes.
Where so here's the thing, right, is that upon watching this, I realized that we just, like, as a society, did not give season 1 of RWBY, even the non-fight scenes, enough credit. Because apparently, this can be made into an anime, and my god, is everything about it so much worse. And, like, oh my god. And I hate the fact that there's no rhyme or reason behind who is 2D or 3D, and I wish that I could figure some way of, like, knowing why. I just want to know why. I would love... Okay. I'm not going to watch any more of this series, I think. Unless someone pays me to sit down and watch and commentate the whole thing, I will not watch it. Unless all of my friends are like, all right, we're going to sit down and watch it together, and we're going to hate watch it. I will not watch this series. I refuse to watch this series alone. But I would be so interested in a documentary about how this anime got made.
Yes.
How it exists as a thing at all is just fascinating to me.
The promotional and concept art is amazing.
Well, so it's based on a manga that was published in the early 2010s.
Oh.
And apparently, the main staff of this series, of the anime series, have no previous experience working with anime, which we could tell, obviously, right? But like the CG animation is really bad because while the scripting of the motion is not terrible, it feels like they just kind of keyframed things and then like were like, all right, point A to point B. Let's just use Adobe Flash's like tween function.
Right. Yeah. That's why I feel like the animators maybe since it was their first anime didn't have enough time to actually commit to making things look really good. Either that or they didn't have the skill set. I don't know.
They must just not know how to do it, which I mean is entirely possible, obviously.
It is entirely possible that they either didn't know how to do it or they just didn't have the time. Because I mean, obviously, like if you don't have time, you're just gonna slap together whatever works.
Like you could make a machinima version of this show and it would look better. You could script this entire show in like say Apex Legends and it would look better. And it's funny because I'm reading on the Wikipedia page, it says the first trailer of the anime was instantly met with heavy online backlash due to the poor quality of the CGI animation. The anime has also been criticized as homophobic as the third episode censored a same-sex kiss.
They what?
So it's bad and homophobic. Oh my god.
I need to see that scene.
Oh my
gosh.
Lord. Wow, why are there so many manga adaptations?
Wait, of XR?
Yeah, bizarre. Anyway, this anime is so bad that I would not recommend it to anybody unless you really wanted to like hate watch it. Hey, if you're bored on a Saturday night, you want to play a drinking game, hey, here you go. Oh boy, I don't want to talk about X-Arm anymore. I cannot allow this series to take up any more of my brain space. Let's talk about Tenchi Sozo Design Boo, or
I see
Heaven's
the
Design.
Sorry.
What?
I looked up episode 3.
Yeah?
They censor it with like a white light.
What? Oh my god! You mean they censor it the same way they censor the naked bodies?
I don't
That's
know
so
if
much
this is
worse
what they're
than I
referring
thought.
to. I don't know if this is what they're referring to, because in the first second, I'll link you. In the first
Okay,
second,
you have to link me.
it has the kiss, but then it's like censored, but then they zoom in on the lips, so it's not actually like censored, right? Because they zoom in on it afterward. I don't know if this is the one they're referring to or if there's another one after, but it's just the first thing I saw when I pulled up the episode.
Okay, hold on. Let me take a look. Oh no! Oh no! Oh my god, you're right, they did. Oh. Holy shit. Okay, yes. Anyway, this anime is very, 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 very bad. Like you can tell that they actually probably don't even actually know how to animate in 3D, because the bullets that get stopped by the main villain in the first episode just get smaller. They don't even they move and they get smaller. They don't have any
scale
sense
down.
of perspective. Yeah, they literally get scaled down. It's like you just press Control T Shift and then you scale it down. Oh god. Okay, no, we have to talk about Heaven's Design Team, because I'm not talking about X-Arm anymore.
All right, let's talk about the design team.
Okay. So, I love this anime, and this is
great.
another anime you should watch. Very cute. It feels very Cells at Work, where it's like very like stealthily educational about the animal kingdom. But it's very, very charming.
Yes.
Having distinctive characters with their own idiosyncrasies goes a long way for making a show interesting, because you get very good character interactions. Like I love the character interactions in this show.
They're so fun.
I love the old guy who invented the horse, who's just like, what if we made everything look like a horse?
Everything he invents afterward has to be inspired by the horse.
I love the guy who's just like, the snake is the strongest creature. Yeah, they're all very charming and lovely in their own ways. And I think it's very funny when we abstract the idea of what animals are like. This, because you're like, oh, that's right. I guess animals are kind of really, really weird.
Yeah, definitely. And it teaches you about creatures that you might not even know exist, like that.
Right.
I don't know, that underwater thing in the first episode.
The ping pong tree. The ping pong splash tree. I didn't realize that was a real animal either.
Yeah, it's crazy. So they teach you a lot about different animal functions, but also like hypothetical situations too. Like, this is why the unicorn can't exist.
Right, exactly.
Because osteoporosis.
It's like, what if we just made it really stupid? Yeah, I think it's very it's very cute, and it's so like, it's so charming in a way that like is kind of hard to explain, but like you can kind of immediately feel it. You're like, oh, this is cool, this is cute.
It's really cute.
I will say, very specifically, I like that there is a trans character in this show who everybody obviously refers to as a woman. And the kind of like lore blurbs about it like state that she bays with the other women and all that. But you can tell from her design that she's kind of meant to be like a trans woman, you know, like very like flat chest, like very flamboyant. But like interestingly, I feel like as far as a character goes, there's obviously a degree of like kind of very over dramatic like flamboyance that is like obviously very easy shorthand for like a trans woman. But also as far as the representation goes, it's actually way leagues better than a lot of other shows. Period.
I would say so. I was kind of like on edge, right? Because whenever this this type of character, whatever, that how anime portrays LGBT characters is very like they type them, right? And they all they categorize it in a way that they all behave the same. They're all like they'll try to sexually harass you and stuff like that. And it's surprisingly refreshing that we didn't get all that just that Pandora's box of craziness within this the representation of this character. And thank goodness.
I mean, obviously, there is a like there's an amount to be said about the fact that like she's still voiced by a man,
right?
And obviously we have kind of a long way to go in regards to that, but overall, like as far as a trans character goes in an anime, like astoundingly well handled. And in the anime about angels designing like biological animals too, like I mean,
right?
Come on.
And it's so funny because she loves birds, and so she and the snake guy fight.
I think that's super cute. Yeah, why don't we talk about Vlad Love? Which is a pun in Japanese because Vlad is pronounced Budad. And and it's blood because the main character is addicted to donating blood, and they won't let her donate blood a lot because that's bad for you, like super bad for you. And then she meets a vampire, and guess what happens then?
Yeah, but they're in love because we have all the shows this season where girls are falling in love, and that's great.
If this is the girls love revolution, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I just don't know like why all the shows have to be so weird in this season, at least.
I don't know.
This one especially is very weird.
Who's to say? Yeah, this is maybe one of the weirdest shows I've watched in a way that has nothing to do with the like way that okay. So it's weird with nothing to do with the setting, right? Obviously the setting is a little strange because it's like she's addicted to giving blood, which is weird. But obviously she meets a vampire, that kind of stuff gets sorted out, whatever. But the weird part about this show is the way that it is it's made. Like the design and production of this show is done in such a way that it feels like because the aesthetics of this show, I feel like, are pretty modern day, kind of, not quite actually, but like the aesthetics of the show are modern, but the aesthetic tendencies of the show, the aesthetic sensibilities of the show are like probably in the mid 2000s, and the editing and direction of this show is very early 2000s. There's a lot of these kind of weird like cut-in scroll, like cut-in shots that like happen where like something is happening on screen and then like a panel will come down onto screen with something else, and then a panel will come up from the other side of the screen with something else. And it gives a very like interesting, like disjointed kind of unconnected feeling, which is very jarring. I wouldn't say necessarily in a bad way, but definitely a little disorienting. And it makes the entire show feel like it feels very surreal in a way, I guess I should say. It reminds me a lot of shows that would air during the mid to early 2000, like the sort of okay, so from 2000 to like 2010, right? That decade, it feels like it comes from that decade of design sensibility where if you showed me this show and you put it next to Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei and Bakemonogatari, I would say, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it does. It just feels like very reminiscent of that era in anime.
It has like a very. This is interesting. I hadn't thought about this show in quite a long time, but it has a very like Excel Saga vibe to it.
Yeah, you know what, the school nurse, the first time I saw her, she looks like she was drawn by Kazuya Minakura, who is the artist for Genso Maden Sayuki. Like, she just looks like she walked right out of that series. And I was so stunned. I was like, and that's also like a early 2000s-ish series.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. I don't know how much. Okay, so here's the thing. I have a great deal of love and respect for that decade of anime. But I don't know how well it works here.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to say that I was super invested in the first episode of this anime. The trailer was very interesting to me because it was bonkers, but the actual anime itself was actually pretty slow, all things considered.
Yeah.
A shockingly small amount of stuff happened.
Right, like considering the premise and the gags that they were setting up, like there were definitely a lot of moments, but it didn't feel like a whole lot happened.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where the disconnect is here either.
Yeah. I definitely it feels like it comes from that era. I just don't necessarily think that it's good. It's probably kind of the long and short of it. Yeah, I liked it kind of, but not enough to keep watching it. I didn't feel like I needed another episode of it. Like if I was you know what I wish it was? I wish it had leaned farther into being bonkers. It feels like is like quirky and weird, but it felt like it did not ramp it up fast enough. But hey, I guess I mean, hey, it's gay, like they are in some sort of relationship, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is cool, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this season of anime and all the lesbians, but if this is the Girls of Revolution, then so
Revolution.
Girl-volution. Girls love-revolution. Love-evolution. No. Anyway, let's on the next thing.
Next thing is the second season of Cooking, the new Cooking Master Boy.
Cooking Master Boy.
Yes, and I love it. It's they pick up like at the end of an arc because I guess they didn't have enough time to put it in the first season. But yeah, no, it's just more. And I love it, and the food as always looks amazing. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yep.
I think that's probably it then. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I feel like when you're that far into a long-running series, like it is difficult to say anything except watch the first one and see if you feel like you want to watch it.
Yeah, it doesn't take a turn like Promised Neverland, where the second season is significantly different than the first season.
Right.
Yeah. So it's more.
It is more.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Actually, that does remind me of something that I don't know why, but I was just vaguely reminded suddenly about what Dr. Stone feels like. Dr. Stone feels like that guy on YouTube that makes knives out of everything. That's what it feels like. If that guy got isekai, he would survive. That's all I'm saying.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so I suppose that is the episode then. That
Cool.
is all of the stuff that we watched and had opinions
so
about.
much. Yeah.
So, who are you? Where can we find you on the internet?
Hey, I am Renu, also known as Swan. You can find me on Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook and Twitch, all at SwanDrawn. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. I have been keeping up with posting weekly so far.
Woohoo!
We're on a roll. And I'm still Twitch streaming, art and whatnot. So come on over if you want to check that out.
Nice.
Yep. How about you?
You can find me all places at Literal Soup. I am probably, after this recording, gonna go play Dark Souls. We obviously are still doing Ace Attorney every week, which is super fun.
Yeah.
We are on the 4th case of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. And
the DL6 case.
Yeah, we're uncovering the secrets of the DL6 case. It's interesting. I've definitely mentioned this before, but the 5th case of the first game actually did not exist until the DS remake. It was specifically created for the DS remake because they felt like they needed another case. And I will say, I'm pretty sure I remember liking it, but of all the times I've replayed Ace Attorney, I've actually never finished that case a second time, I think, because like by the time I'm supposed to get to it, I kind of have lost steam.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna get through it this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check that out, we stream every Saturday evening.
Yep, every Saturday
over on Soupy's channel,
8 p.m. PST. And we usually go for about 3-ish hours. Sometimes a little bit more, depending on, obviously. Okay, yeah, so that's obviously what I'm up to. That's what we're up to. And yeah, other than that, I will be keeping myself busy, doing this and that. You know how I do, keeping myself busy. Anyway, our opening is by Sk8 Network, and our ending is by Takuma Kara. And the patrons we are thanking this week are Evan, Magpie Merites, Cheru, Sean, Frostfall, Claire, Undead Uncanny, and Dylan. Thank you so much for your support.
Yay, thank you.
Could not make the podcast without you.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, but it would be very difficult. So thank you for all your support, and thank you everyone else for listening. I really super appreciate it. I think that means we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Sayonara. また明日ね。